I'm Louis Moroni, and this is Constraints the Podcast from Hi-Fi Handiwork, a 20-episode series. Each episode is a chat with a guest from a creative industry about a project obstacle they've experienced, viewed through the lens of project management's three constraints of scope, time, and budget. Further insights and commentary can be found in the show notes. We hope you enjoy the program. I have a theory about creativity in project management. A project is an activity with the goal of creating a new product, service, or process. Since the creation of something new requires creativity, then creativity is a necessary component of projects. And yet, some argue that there are projects that don't require creativity. So, I've identified 4 types of creativity that you can find in different degrees depending on the project. There is one type of creativity needed to solve an engineering problem, like how to build a bridge over a river or how to breathe in outer space. Engineering creativity solves problems using known physical constraints to achieve a vision. A vision, like Daniel Libeskind's famous napkin drawing of the reimagined Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto. A second, unfettered aesthetic creativity, depicting fantastical crystal shards protruding from the neo-Romanesque architecture that only engineering creativity could make reality. Then there is a third type of creativity aimed at meeting a market need by inventing or improving on a product. A type of creativity that can be called innovation or an aesthetic fettered by function. A fourth kind of creativity is best represented by the film industry. The ultimate vision of a film can be as unfettered as Libeskind's napkin drawing, but the realization of that vision is not driven by engineering problem-solving, though engineering problem-solving is certainly needed. Rather, a film is realized by the primarily aesthetic sense of the various departments that come together to provide the building blocks of the reality to be depicted on the screen. Departments like props, effects, graphics, or, like my guest today, costume design. With over 30 TV and film wardrobe credits to her name, from buyer to stylist, on productions like Priscilla and Nightmare Alley, her creativity contributes along with the other departments to the director's and producer's ultimate vision that you see on screen. Naturally, she also finds other outlets for her aesthetic creativity, one example as an established jewelry designer. So, Gillian Steinhardt, I'm grateful that you will be contributing to my vision for this podcast. Welcome to Constraints.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so here we go. What's happening now? You have an idea for a project obstacle you've experienced?
I would say more of my project obstacles have come from less film industry and more commercial music video earlier parts of my career.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I feel like with film and television, the constraints and the obstacles are standard issue, if you can understand that.
Like what?
They come in the same forms. You're dealing with times, you're dealing with time constraints, you're dealing with budget constraints. Like most things, you're dealing with casting, the people you're working with, you're dealing with labor, you're dealing with all kinds of elements that need to come together in a very succinct way. And there are many people that are part of that puzzle. Whereas I feel like with commercials, there's still that many people involved, but less on the ground in a department. It's sort of like you're one person and you are the entire representative of the wardrobe or costume department. So
interesting. So
it all sort of lands on you.
So back to film for a second, because I haven't worked in film. Well, let's just say at all. But I get the sense that within the departments of a film, and I think I'm kind of restating what you've said already, but just in terms of from the project management perspective, I almost feel like each department has its own project, and you're basically your own project manager, and you come to the film with the vision that you've created. based on your understanding of the film's intent. And then that basically gets a yay or nay from, I suppose the director or the producer or maybe whoever the creative lead is.
Yes.
But you have a lot of sort of freedom within that context, just in terms of how you bring the vision to life. You propose the vision.
It depends. I think every project is different. I think every director and producing team is different. And so you're often given a certain amount of leeway depending on what it is. So depending on the project, depending on how necessary the other people's input is, I guess you could say. So, for instance, on Priscilla, it was very creative because the director, Sofia Coppola, was very open to what we were creating. She, of course, wanted to see it, wanted to look at it, wanted to have conversations, and was very much set the tone for color palette and overall aesthetic. She's very aesthetically minded, and so that's how that worked. She sort of just checked in to see what was happening. And the director of photography, he's also part of the puzzle. He's very much involved in what the textures are, what the colors are, how they all relate. So those are the elements that sort of were involved with that. And then you have other projects where the director has a very, very, very tight handle on where the costumes go. Or, for instance, if you're on a television show, if it's network television, broadcast television, there's a lot of people that need to see it. It goes up the chain, up the chain, up the chain. You don't have a lot of room. You hope that you get your vision across, but with so many people in the deciding room, I guess, as part of the decision making, often the vision gets watered down.
Which do you prefer?
Well, I don't like when there are so many people making decisions because you lose sight of what you're doing. Kind of, your intuition gets challenged, I guess. Right.
Do you feel that? So I guess the vision isn't as cohesive. Do you find that the vision is always never as cohesive? The more sort of chefs there are in the kitchen.
Yes, generally.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean that makes sense, and it seems like that. It seems more exciting when the different departments are given that sort of freedom to contribute their creativity and their vision. So okay, so that's film. So and we sort of seen the gradations, the difference between sort of what can be more freedom in terms of your costume design and where you're more constrained. So now let's talk about music videos. Okay. How does that compare and differ?
I think music videos in my career, I did a lot of music videos early on when music videos were really a lot. When there was money in it, when there was it was
networks dedicated to airing them, and they actually made or break a song.
Yes. Yeah. And it was very important for artists to have those videos. So they tended to be, depending on the artist, they tended to be very wild rides. It was like guerrilla filmmaking. There were no unions involved. There was no...
Why weren't there unions involved? I mean, there are unions involved in film and TV.
I think there are unions... for different technicians, like I think if, in the States, Teamsters are involved, then that's union, or I think some of the technicians might have unions, but certainly stylists, costume designers never went into it union-based. So we would shoot more often than not for close to 24 hours straight.
Oh, wow.
And they were just very crazy times. So music videos, and they wanted so much for so little most of the time. The bigger the artist, obviously, the more you had. But still, it was always a challenge to do what needed to be done with the time and the money that was being offered.
So when you say 24 hours, is it like you got hired, you started at 8 a.m., and the music video was done 8 a.m. the next day?
No, I would say that you always get a certain amount of prep time in costumes, wardrobe. You have days, weeks, however long, to prep the shoot. And then, so the actual shoot when the camera goes on, shoot, everybody's called to the set, that could go on. That used to go on for 24 hours straight. Yeah. You'd show up at 5 a.m. and then return and go home the next morning when the sun was coming up.
And the shoot would be done.
Sometimes you come back the next day.
So how was would you have a clear understanding of what the vision was typically with a music video before you'd, during the prep time and?
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And how much freedom would you have with the work that you were doing in terms of, your creative input?
Oh, that was the most creative that you could get, I think, back in the day. Those would be the most creative shoots you could possibly have. I'm not talking about photo shoots or anything like that. But, I think that music videos would have been the most creative. But that being said, you also were challenged the most because you often didn't get the budgets that you needed. And so you'd have to make that penny stretch. And therefore, I suppose you'd have to be even more creative.
Can you, I don't want to put you on the spot, but can you think of something that you stretched the penny on that you ended up being kind of proud of?
I suppose, all of them, I don't know.
You don't know. That's
I don't know. All of them.
It's all a blur.
It is a blur, and it's been a long time since I've done something like that. But, it's, that's the challenge. Locations are a challenge. That's, I could say, the next thing I could.
So what would that be?
Up.
Like, what would because you wouldn't be in a what do they call it? Like a film box, like a film studio. Yeah.
Sometimes they were studios. That would be good. I've shot in the most outrageous locations. That would be freezing cold in the middle of nowhere. I shot in I don't even know what it was called. It was basically a processing center for sewage, but waste, like human waste sewage, because it looked very futuristic. It had very futuristic architecture, and therefore that's where they chose. And
did it smell futuristic?
It stunk. It was seeping through the pipes. You could see it. We shot all night, freezing cold. If you closed the doors, you could smell it even more. If you opened the doors, you were freezing cold. And so those are the kind of things you get. Or you get, warehouses that are decrepit warehouses that should be shut down, that people shouldn't be in. We shot a lot in places like that.
Right. Okay. So these sound like locations that wouldn't fly in, say, a film at the same time, like in the same era. Were the restrictions more, or like would you actually find yourself on a film set doing in a similar location? It's
possible
with the same kind of hours. It seems like none of this would fly today anywhere. But maybe is there a Wild West out there?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's still a Wild West.
Where?
I think
Where's that Wild West?
I think everywhere. I think I don't know if we've set new precedents as much as we should about where we're shooting. And I mean, there's a safety. There's definitely safety is always something that unionized films care more about. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure. I think that we still shoot in the middle of freezing cold and stand outside for hours and shoot in very treacherous locations, I think. Not treacherous meaning like run down, broken down places. And
because they're authentic.
I guess it's the location they like. It's got, the patina.
Oh, I used to use that word all the time.
Yeah,
and someone called me on it once.
It's a good word.
Okay, so so back to the 24-hour thing, because this is really interesting. What are the reasons? Like, why? Why do it? Why cram it all in 24 hours? Was it because it was just rock and roll, or is there some sort of money saving? It seems like, wouldn't you be paid overtime?
No. Good question. We were always on a flat rate.
Ah.
As far as I can remember, I don't know. We just went all day, all night, and so often. Yeah, I just remember just shooting all night and all day on almost everything I ever did. So in music videos.
Would you be on? And there's a bit more that you had said earlier that we need to touch on, but. There'd be other people on set. Were people just like, all right, 24 hours, let's do this? Or like...
No, I don't think anyone was that thrilled about it.
What happens on the 24th? Like, how can you even be...
Functioning?
I mean, how can the product be of any quality?
The artist is usually... kept in a trailer, relaxing and brought out when they need to, coming and going. It's, sometimes it was a really big party atmosphere. Sometimes it was just so busy that you didn't even have time to think else, think about it. You just, by the time you were finished, you finished. I mean, it's, we are, I think people who work in film and the entire production end of things. I think that we are maybe numb to that. We just work it's just part of our DNA at this point.
What and is that? Do you think that that's just culture, or there's a need for that, given the business model of film?
Good question. I mean, I don't think that it needs to happen that way. I just recently came back from Australia where I was working on a film, and we worked, we had out the door at 6 p.m. I mean, everybody, they started at 7 and we were out the door at 6 p.m. And the film got made. Right. I mean, it was crazy. We did do lots of stuff, and we had...
You didn't do lots of stuff.
We did. I mean, it was also a challenge, but it was...
you did do lots of... right.
There was a different way of working there.
Do you think that the same film that you did in Australia, done in Canada or the United States, would have been finished quicker? Because... they did it 7 to 6?
I'm not sure if they would have. No, I don't know if that's the case.
So maybe it's just culture.
It's just culture. I don't know if it would be finished faster. I think they do what they need to do in order to accommodate the hours and accommodate the days they need. So that's the bottom line. I think things get pushed. They push as much as they can, and then,
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so now at the start, you said something about on the music video set that you were kind of a department of one. Mm-hmm. So how does that compare to what you're used to? And what does that mean for the work that you would do?
Well, I think that, commercials and music videos, for instance, it's, you're not a team. You may have one assistant, two assistants, if you're lucky, three assistants, but they're coming in. You're just the one person that's.
Are those assistants dedicated to you, or they're just kind of?
No, they're usually dedicated. They're
right.
people that I hire. Mm-hmm. But it just comes down to you're just the one person. It's not, there's no one fielding anything. There's no, one person dealing with location, like the logistics of how we're going to load into the space, or when, dealing with the background characters,
right.
that, and like it's all just
like the work that needs to get done isn't any less. It's just you have less people doing it.
I mean, it's a lot less than a film, I would say, but a film on any given day is probably the same as, one commercial or one music video. So, but it's not a team. It's you're really just responsible for your own thing, and you're the one person in charge. So,
and what about communication? Do you have regular production meetings like around the table?
Oh, of course.
Similar to that's sort of similar across the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, of course. So,
and your department's always called the costume department. Is that?
Well, in film and television, we're costume department, wardrobe department. Mm-hmm. It's, the costume department. We're pretty much trying to shift it so everyone says costumes.
Oh, you prefer costume?
Oh, yeah.
Why?
Costumes, it validates the job or the position
right.
even
as
more.
Opposed to like a wardrobe is like, let's go buy a dress. And...
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you love about it? Oh, do you love it? I don't know. Maybe you don't.
I do love it, yes.
What do you love about it?
I love, what do I love? I love dressing people. I love clothing. I love textiles. I love accessories. I love researching, telling stories through clothing, telling stories through articles of clothing, silhouettes, colors. It's just there's so much in just that piece of the puzzle, piece of the world. You really are helping the actor become the character. You're very much like in tandem with the actor, I would say. Like
ideally, do you work with the actor to figure out?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And did you always know that, hey, there's this thing called costume style design? What do we? But I sorry, because costume design.
Costume design.
Costume design.
I mean, I would say when I do film and television, it's costume.
Yeah.
When I do commercials or music video, it's styling.
But we should call it costume designing. Yeah. So, did you always when did you know that there was a thing called costume design? Like, did you be like, oh my God, there's this thing out there called costume design that I need to do because I know how I love to envision people in clothing? Or did you somehow fall into it and realize, oh my God, I love envisioning, I love creating styles on people?
I remember chatting with someone, a friend of a friend's, who was a stylist, and I had no idea that existed. And he told me what he did, and I said, that's a job? And I said, that is the job I should be doing. That's totally my job. And so he kind of helped me figure out what to do, how to get into it. And I sort of found different ways. I sort of, there's different niches within it, mm-hmm. within that overall umbrella of costume, styling, wardrobe, blah, blah, blah. So I sort of, snaked my way through it and mm-hmm. figured out what worked best for me. And I've gone many different directions within it, only to come back to Toronto to do it. in film and television.
And when you're in the scenario where there's a lot of chefs in the kitchen and you're basically not styling, you're just sort of order taking.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like, why am I in this profession?
Oh, yeah. Not why am I in this profession, but
why did I take this gig?
Why did I take this job?
Yeah.
But those are always like, you know what? They're always, they're challenging in different ways, those kind of things. They are sometimes very miserable, sometimes very, completely underwhelming. But, you learn always, because you learn how to navigate your way. It's a sales job at the same time, because you have to sell your vision to those people that are above you that will ultimately make those. So, you're always sharpening your sales skills, I guess. Yeah.
And are there directors or producers that you just love working with, that you've had the opportunity to work with more than once?
Yes, I think so. I think in more in commercials and more in that world, yes. Not in film as much.
Why is that?
I just haven't. I haven't really been in film long enough to sort of get into the multiple, project with anyone.
Well, I wish that for you.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Thank you.
And we're kind of, if you believe it, we're kind of near.
Out.
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
It went by quickly for me as well.
I was going to tell you about so many things. I was going to tell you all about. Anyways.
What?
No, it's fine.
All
it
right.
was. I was. Yeah.
Well, look, there is one last thing.
Okay.
And it's just a question I've been asking at the end. It puts you a little bit on the spot, unless you've listened to every episode and you're like, oh, I know what's coming. But I just ask if you could finish this sentence.
Mm-hmm.
Creativity is.
Creativity is the practical application of imagination.
I love it. Great. Well, Gillian, thank you very much for joining me today. I really had a great time.
Thank you for having me. So did I.
Great. Constraints the Podcast receives resource support from the Alan Slate Radio Institute at Toronto Metropolitan University and is co-produced by Louis Moroney and Mihir Kore. Please subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts to automatically be notified when a new episode is posted. Also, follow us on Instagram at constraints_podcast. Constraints the Podcast is brought to you by Hi-Fi Handiwork. Sound advice.